recording this for anybody who's not able to attend the event. For anybody that just joined, welcome. We're thrilled to have you guys be a part of our very first event for 2022. It is a fun topic, and we'll definitely kind of be delving into it a little bit more. I'm gonna add a couple more people in the waiting room and kind of go over a little housekeeping things for anybody that's new with us. Kind of what to expect. We just ask, hey, keep yourself muted, raise your hand or if you have a question, or put it in the chat. And then if you want to update your name, organization, pronouns, if you would like, no requirement there. And then add your link for your URL for LinkedIn so we can connect after this. And be kind and have fun and clap for your peers. So I'm going to do a quick little poll just to see how many people are new today. I know we got a couple people who are still joining, but I want to know, how did you hear about YNP? Have you joined us from a previous event, coworker, friend referral, our newsletter, our social media? That just kind of helps me figure out what's the best value of my time when it comes to like communications. Also kind of lets us know how many people are new joining us for the first time. Got 13, I got two more people who I'm waiting for your response from. So get them in and I'll share the results here for you guys. So it looks like about half of the people who are joining us today have joined us from a previous event. So welcome back. We're absolutely thrilled to have you. And everyone else kind of heard from a friend or other communication. So thanks so much for joining. Kind of a little bit about us and what we do. My name is Catherine Swanton. I'm the manager of marketing and special events at CNM. Our YNP group is one of the two networking groups we have. We have one for CEOs and one for our young nonprofit professionals. Who we are, this is designed to be an inclusive space to kind of provide you with resources, networking, a lot more networking when we were in person. And we've got some fun events coming up in the future this year. Hopefully, if weather, and everything, pandemic cooperates, we'll be able to do that. It's also an opportunity to kind of share some resources, learning, engagement. We do have a group on Facebook and LinkedIn. I'm going to go shoot those in the chat in just a minute. So we're happy to have you guys here. Some things that we kind of have going on in CNM. So we are running a special throughout the month of February. All of our CNM members will have access to free DEI courses throughout the month of February. That includes our one on the 8th, which is racism and radicalized health disparities, and the blackout conversations and opportunities for change. And then we have another one at the end of February. So definitely please take advantage of that. For all of you fundraising marketing people like me, we have a really cool mashup with Venture Forward, which is our partners out in Chattanooga. And we're doing, it's like a half day mashup with half day of marketing and half day of communication. So we would definitely love you guys to be a part of that. I see we've got some good stuff in the chat. I'm kind of trying to watch it all and see how everybody's going. But I'm gonna kind of get started with some introductions and then turn it over to the amazing Elizabeth. So as we were thinking about, topics for this year and what we wanted to do, this topic came to mind partially because of, the bloopers that, I've had and we've all had, but we've kind of seeing as we're going into 2022 that times are changing. Our presentations are expected to be polished virtually. We're expected to have a different kind of presence than we were last year. The grace and that forgiveness of those sharing the wrong screen or leaving the bra in the background, like we were talking about earlier, those things like that, have changed a little bit. So, the whole idea of this is to kind of kick off this year as we're thinking about talking to funders and doing presentations that we have some really great skills and some experience behind us to do well. I want to take a minute to introduce our fantastic speaker today. Her name is Elizabeth M'balu Oke. She is the president of PivotPath based out of Atlanta. She's kind of joining us today with over 10 years of marketing, branding, communications experience. And she's a very engaged speaker. I think you'll absolutely love hearing from her. She is a Sierra Leonean American, and she'll talk a little bit more about her work in Atlanta and her work back in Sierra Leone. But she's passionate about storytelling, connecting nonprofits, and of course, ultimately, to increase donations and stakeholder buy-in.
Oh yeah.
So that's what we do. But I am going to turn it over to Miss Elizabeth.
Thank you. That was an amazing introduction. Hi, everyone. How are y'all? I know that you're all on mute, but I'm just going to wave to y'all just to kind of keep some engagements going. As Catherine mentioned, my name is Elizabeth M'balu Oke. I am the founder and president of PivotPath. But beyond that, I am a mother, I am a daughter, I am a sister, I am a comedian, so I think so. And I really have seen the power of engagement and being strategic, even when it comes to public speaking, right? Oftentimes we have a reason as to why we're trying to have a particular talk, whether it be with a donor or with a stakeholder or even internally. But I think it's really important for us to tap into the why. And know that we're not back in the 90s where we had to be so salesy when it comes to public speaking, but that it's about empathy and it's about really trying to resonate with whatever target audience is that you're trying to speak to. And so I look forward to getting through the presentation with you all and discussing public speaking skills. I myself believe that I'm an introvert, although I've been told that I'm not. And so there's some tips in here for introverts when it comes to public speaking as well that I'd love to go over. And of course, at the end, just having a conversation. I think that when it comes to presentations, especially when it's virtual, one, everyone's in them. And so it's like, oh my God, another one. But two, it's good to have that engagement, it's bouncing ideas off of one another. And it's not just me being the facilitator and the presenter and the expert, if you will, but I'm sure there are many things that I can also gain from you all, whether it be your comments or your questions. And so I welcome them for sure at the end or conversationally, depending upon how Catherine wants it to be ran. Do you want to start the first slide?
Awesome. Yep, I will pull that right up.
Sweet. Perfect. So as I mentioned, today we're going to be discussing the power of public speaking, but particularly when it comes to virtual presentations. Again, we're all in the times. We know that the virtual presentations are the typical way in which we are connecting with those donors or stakeholders or even internally. And so how do we really engage with them or even understand what engagement looks like in this time, as well as trying to inspire them in ways that we have to be creative with? And so these are a couple of the topics that we'll discuss today. So how does public speaking and virtual presentations connect, or how are they correlated in any way? What's the difference between the virtual and face-to-face presentations? What do we gain? What do we lose? And what are the ingredients of a public speaker or a great public speaker when it comes to presentations or when it comes to just the overall tone of what you're trying to engage people with? Lastly, again, some gems for those introverts out there who are probably not going to raise their hands because they're introverts as well. And then some bonus tips on just some key takeaways of how to really ensure that you're confident when it comes to your speaking engagement opportunities. I'll run through this slide since Catherine gave an amazing introduction and I appreciate that. But essentially, and I'm sure I'm not the only one on the call, our main objectives in general, whether it be our nonprofit or our business entity, is to get people to listen, to care, and to act, right? At the end of the day, we have that CTA, that call to action. What are we trying to get the individual to do? Give us money to fund this particular program or project, buy into our programs that we have that in our services that we offer within our institution, get our employee or our coworker to agree on a particular direction moving forward. We're all trying to have those similar objectives. And then also engaging the audiences. How do we truly engage someone on a personal level? How does it become not just bullets, but something that actually resonates with that individual? And then, as I mentioned, of course, increasing that buy-in. You have the donors, but of course we always want more. And so how do we ensure that we're being innovative and really having unique relationships and cultivating them accordingly when it comes to those audiences as well. So since this is a networking event, I'm not sure if everyone knows who each other is or not, but I did want to have a little icebreaker. I hope that wasn't cheesy. And if you're an 80s, 90s baby, woo, if that went over your head, I'm sorry. That's some vanilla ice. But essentially, since we are in a happy hour or a networking event, I wanted to take about 5 to 7 minutes to really just diving in, getting people to know one another, getting out into some breakout groups, and perhaps asking each other the question. And so you'll have a partner, you'll pair up. Within the 5 to 7 minutes, please ask the questions, and each person, of course, answer respectively. What's your name? What organization or entity do you work for? A social change issue that you advocate for, and this could be personally or professionally, and what you're hoping to learn or to take away from today's session. And so I will get my coworker and colleague Catherine to assist me with getting you all into your break rooms, and then we can come back after 5 to 7 minutes.
Awesome. I'm going to set everybody into breakout rooms. I've got a couple rooms with 2 people, and then I'm going to have one room with 3 people. And I'll copy some of these questions to ask. I'll put those in there for you guys to broadcast to all the rooms, so you guys going to get a reminder of what you're going to be talking about. Set you guys up.
Thank you.
Should be back, so I'm going to keep on recording. Elizabeth, it's to you.
Thank you.
Let me pull up your slides.
Sure. All right, welcome back, everyone. So if you could go to the thank you icebreaker slide, I'm going to just randomly call on maybe 2 to 3 people, or pairs rather, to get us to know who you are and who your partner is, and organizations and all those different things that you all spoke about in the breakout rooms. Hope no nervousness. Or does anyone want to volunteer to go first? All right, I will call on Rachel. Hi, Rachel.
I knew I was gonna get picked.
You're like, God.
I know. I was gonna volunteer too, and I was like, I should just. But I talked with Patricia Powell, and she works kind of with AmeriCorps, but hands-on Nashville. But she's really what she's most passionate about is the Nashville Autism Peers, which she is creating as a nonprofit, and that's kind of also her her social change, because she's trying to change the perspective, the perspective, the view of autism currently, and that it's not something that needs to be changed, or just making sure that the workplace too is also a welcoming environment. And she hopes that she'll learn how to communicate better with that peer group, so that they can have meetings and be more successful with their interactions online.
Oh, wow. Y'all said all that in 5 minutes? That's awesome. That's awesome. Thank you, Rachel, for sharing. I appreciate that. Any other volunteers? Soren. Hey, what's up?
Hello. I'm just like Rachel. I figured I was going to get called. So my partner was Lance Mackey. I think, correct me if I mispronounced your last name, Lance. He works for a for-profit organization called Cromwell Media that does a lot of advertising and marketing work for organizations and groups within the Nashville area.
Nice.
And he's had previous experience working in the nonprofit sector from, again, the marketing side. And right now he's been enjoying being one of the committee member, the young professional committee members for the Center for Nonprofit Management, and helping us basically learn more about all the different things that are going on, and just enjoys really engaging with the nonprofit community in the city overall. And then we both kind of shared really being excited about today's session, because there have been, again, we've had to be so flexible with what we present, either internally to our teams or externally to other individuals, that then also knowing where some of the things to make sure you have set up on the back end, like if your Wi-Fi goes out, or
Right.
if your if a slide isn't showing up properly, kind of just making sure you've got all of the tools on the back end to be able to adjust when things are going to go wrong, because that always happens for all of us.
Right.
And then both of us just be thinking about, now that eventually we'll be getting back to in-person presentations again soon, remembering what are some of the aspects that you should do during in-person presentations, but then conversely, what are things that you should do that are more important for virtual presentations. So having the knowledge base for both avenues once that's more prevalent.
I love it. Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing. So to calm the nerves of everyone, I will not call anyone else out, but it is correlated to what we're talking about today, right? And so before I even called anyone's name, what was your thought when you came back and I said, hey, any volunteers? And really tapping into that psyche, because that's really reflective of how we think sometimes about public speaking. If you're like, oh crap, don't call me, girl, why'd you call me? And it may be a reflection of, okay, these are the nerves or the certain things that we have to really understand. It isn't a bad thing to have nerves. We all have nerves. I had nerves prior to coming in here. But I think tapping into the why, and also having the confidence, like well, they're here because they want to learn from me and want to meet me. It kind of calms down the nerves and really focuses on the bigger picture at hand. Thank you, presenters. And so today we're going to discuss, as Soren mentioned, as well as Rachel, how do we really see the connection between public speaking, whether this be in person or virtual, and these virtual presentations, because they definitely have their sets of challenges. So a few, I think Catherine also touched on some earlier, are the technical bloopers are no longer allowed. You cannot speak on mute. You cannot, share your screen and share something that's not supposed to be shared. You can't have the bra in the background. You're expected to be perfect when it comes to your lighting, your backgrounds, your tone. Attention spans are also limited, and that's real. If you're not engaging, if you're not asking people questions or just even having an engaging tone, you're going to lose your audience to Instagram or Twitter or something else that's on the feed or YouTube. And I think all of us have kind of been on that end too, right? And then lastly, when it comes to virtual, you can't read faces as easily. You're reading a chat box, or you're reading a little, black box. And it's really hard to really ensure, are you really engaging with your audience? Are they really listening to you? Are they ordering a #1 from Chick-fil-A with extra sauce? Like, you don't really know what's happening on the other end. And so really being able to tap in as you would in person isn't as easy. But we have some solutions. Well, a few. So like Jay-Z, my grandfather always said, got 99 problems, but sharing screens ain't one. And I'm sure he may not have said that before, but it just sounded really cool to say. Essentially, some solutions when it comes to presenting are to test. As Soren mentioned just now, there are going to be hiccups when it comes to technical things. Your microphone may not be working, the lighting may be off, camera setup is wrong, or even Wi-Fi. But just finding a way to kind of test as much as you can, and practicing your presentation, do a couple run-throughs, maybe figuring out the lighting of the background will also assist with that. Making it an experience. And so, as you can see, I'm relatively an engaging speaker, and I kind of tap into that humor, but finding a way, depending upon your target audience, to getting them to resonate with what you're saying. At the end of the day, comedy or very serious messaging is important, but what's the objective and what are we trying to achieve? If possible, making your experiences virtual intimate within reason, because sometimes you're able to kind of tap into that emotion and really understand your audience better. However, sometimes you may not always be able to limit your audience, and so within reason, being able to do so may help your presentation. And storytelling is key. The reason why the breakout room was to get to know people's stories and understanding is because when hearing those different things, you get to resonate with different pieces of that story and say, oh wow, we have more in common than maybe I thought. And or, I'm learning something with this person, I want to learn more from them, I can connect with them. And so, sharing your passion, sharing your story within that presentation is key as well. So some differences and some similarities when it comes to virtual versus face-to-face. Geographical reach, of course, with it being virtual, you have a wider reach, and so you don't have to always meet someone within your periphery. But the cost sometimes can vary as well. Sometimes Zoom or those online channels may not be as costly as gas, but sometimes they are if you're traveling 2 hours to meet a particular donor or a stakeholder. Again, body language, facial expression, nonverbal cues are not as easy to get. Of course, if someone's camera's on, you can see them, but if their cameras are off, you're like, I don't really know. And so, of course, having that is definitely a difference when it comes to virtual and in person. Bonding and personal connections. At the end of the day, it's so much easier to establish those connections when it's face to face. However, I think that the past 2 years, as well as online dating, in some instances, has told us that you can still build those personal connections virtually. It's just you have to be creative in how you do so. And again, the attention spans, it's just hard to gauge or harder to gauge attention spans when it's virtual versus in person. You can clearly see that person not listening to you on their phone. Next slide. So what are the ingredients? We talk about the challenges, the solutions, but what are the real ingredients when it comes to being a great public speaker? The first one, or first tip rather, is overcoming fear. As we saw in that breakout room or that session, the psyche is really important when it comes to public speaking and the art of public speaking. And so it's really important for you to identify what makes you feel less confident, or what gives you those nerves when it comes to speaking in public. What are those thoughts that come into your head? Are they going to listen to me? Do they care? Do I look weird? Any of those kind of thoughts that we think about, it's good to kind of tap into them and figure out what kind of solutions we can have to combat those thoughts. Also finding ways to plan against that nervousness. What makes you calm before you speak? Is it eating a bag of chips or some beef jerky? Is it listening to Bruno Mars? Whatever it is to kind of tap into that psyche to cool you down, may be beneficial before you actually have that big talk, whether it be internally or externally. And lastly, as I mentioned before, trust that your audience wants to see you win. They're there either for you or for your presentation or for your topic. They're not going there to see you fail in any way. And so feel that confidence in saying, oh, wow, they're here for me. Or that donor, responded to that email because they want to actually listen to me or they care about this initiative. Take that trust and run with it. Tip 2, set the mood. And so I won't go through this entire checklist because it is very long, but it's more about the location in terms of how you present yourself virtually. Make sure the lighting is right. If you have one of these lights in front of you or not, check your background to ensure that it's clear or at least blurred. Do a sound check, your camera. So just really these, essentials when it comes to ensuring that the least that can go wrong can go wrong. Oh, and the last thing too is designating someone for the chat bot. I've been in many presentations where someone wanted to present and do the chat at the same time. And it's very difficult to do both because you're like, yeah, check your, okay. Yeah, so then the next, and it's just really distracting for those who are actually trying to view the presentation. So finding someone to help you with those technical pieces is key.
Tyler, are you raising your hand because you got a question?
Yeah, kind of just one more thing to add to this list. A funny situation came up in my college course or master's course the other night. We all got together and people were trying to share their screens, but they needed to update Zoom. So they all had to close Zoom and come back to the call. So it just made stuff a lot slower than it should have been.
Yeah, I'm gonna add that to this presentation.
Okay.
Because it's so important. It's true. Like ensuring that you're upgraded and that you're up to speed when it comes to those things, or your computer, and that you didn't set that automatic restart for your computer right at 5:30. And so
Right.
really just ensuring that all those things are in place are key. Thank you for that, Tyler.
Absolutely.
So tip 3, as we discuss little elements of storytelling, your real mission and objectives are to educate, engage, and empower, regardless of who the target audience is, right? We oftentimes see that if it's a presentation that has too many bullets and too many words, we're probably not going to look at it or even be engaged as much. And the study basically said that between 5 to 10%, there's a 5 to 10% retention rate when you're only just sharing facts. However, that retention rate is 65 to 75% when you're telling a story, being engaging, asking questions, showing visuals, whether it be videos or images. And so really ensuring that your presentation, again, whether this be virtual or you presenting face to face, is engaging and has some elements of storytelling in it. So this is kind of a little breakdown in regards to those presentation ingredients. And so design, of course, is key. The less words, the better, but ensuring that the words that you do have in the presentation are impactful. The voice, and this is more so not only your voice when you're presenting, but also the tone of your copy or the content within your presentations. Your nonverbal communication. Are you smiling, or are you just like looking like this and trying to read your presentation? Because I bet you it may not go off that well. The platform that you're using, as Tyler mentioned, ensuring that it is updated or upgraded rather, and that you also know how to navigate it. If it's a new tool, probably not the best idea to try that new tool out at that presentation. The content, again, and this is not just the copy, but also the visual aesthetic of how things look and feel. And so having a mixture, a nice blend of these different elements will definitely ensure that your presentation stands out. Again, mixing up the content and not being too heavy when it comes to written content or text. And even if you are using some font within your presentations, having it definitely no smaller than about 24 point, regardless of what the font is. Because if it's too small, they're just reading like this, and it's just not good for UX or that user experience when they're looking at the presentation. And the final tip is to be mindful of your posture. Most of us either are still working from home or working at offices, and we're constantly like this. And sometimes our shoulders are like this, and we don't even know that they are. And someone's like, "What's wrong?" We're like, "I don't know, nothing's wrong," because we're so used to sitting like this. And so when it comes to our presentations, maybe having some supports. If you know that you typically slouch, maybe having a standing desk when you're presenting will ensure that you're at least upright. But then also maybe having a pillow behind you, as I have right here, to ensuring that at least makes me keep my posture, makes me keep the posture that I need to have. And so ensuring that you put your pillow in a position, standing up, or just really being mindful of the positioning, how you're standing or sitting rather. And then also when it comes to your actual computer, stacking it up on books. Having it down here and then looking down this way is very distracting, because then you feel like all the eyes and the pressure is on you, or vice versa. But when you have it leveled in any kind of way, whether again it be a standing desk, or I literally have like my journal and like 3 other books that are stacked underneath my laptop, it then creates this eye-to-eye contact that at least keeps the relationship kind of going. So here are those tips. Introverts, where are you? Woo woo! Like, I'm not putting my hand up. And so essentially these are the tips, and this was honestly a slide for me and as a reminder for me as well, because I definitely see that I believe that I am an introvert. Again, be yourself and trust yourself. Whatever position that you have in your organization or even personally, you're there for a reason, and nothing is unintentional, right? And so trust that people want to hear you. Trust that what you have to say is vital and that people can gain something from it, regardless of what the topic is. Accept your nerves. So one, acknowledge the nerves that you have, but then accept them and know that it's okay. It's okay to be nervous. just have your vices or the things that kind of cool you down or kind of keep your, your nerves from getting out of control. Again, calm your mind, listen to music, anything that makes you calm within reason before a presentation. Ensure that you have those things in place so that you can have those relationships and have those conversations with your audiences. Smile and perform. You may see the word perform like perform. This is not an act, but if you're an introvert, it may seem like a performance sometimes, or you have to get up in front of a donor or get up in front of your internals or external partners. So it may be a performance, but that's okay too, as long as you smile and you get through it and you project at the end of the day what the story is you're trying to convey, then you've rocked it. And again, remember, your audience wants to see you win. They're there to hear you. They're here to listen to you, to gain something from you, and to just see your expertise. If you are an introvert and you love to read, I did also include a book that I've read multiple times and highlighted and kind of circled called The Power of Introverts in a World That Can't Stop Talking by Susan Cain. And so just some informational type tips just in case you want some more guides after this.
I actually have another one you could add to that, and I just apparently haven't figured out how to raise my hand. That's what I was looking for. And so the other thing you could add, because I have to give a presentation at some point, is to try to make it conversational. To remember that you're not just reading whatever, you're not just talking to people, make it conversational, and that'll keep the smoothness or rhythm or however you want. And the other thing was that I should have mentioned before was when he was talking the Zoom thing, make sure you have good internet, or at least check internet and all that, because I've had issues with internet service for hosting Zoom meetings. So that's it.
Sweet. Thank you, Patricia. That conversational piece is definitely really key, because at the end of the day, you're not speaking to those who are the strangers in terms of what you think in your mind, but you're all here collectively for a reason. Clearly, there's something that's engaging you with a similar purpose, whether it be this topic or whatever you're speaking on. And so it should be conversational for sure. Thank you, Patricia. Sweet. And so as we've kind of all discussed, either individually or together, presenting virtually is very similar to presenting in person, right? You have to be strategic in terms of what your messaging is, what your story is going to be, and how you're going to convey it. But then you also have to mention that relatability, as Patricia mentioned, with conversational. Be conversational with it. It is not a speech where you're just so stoic and you're trying to get them to listen, or maybe they're not listening. It is an engaging type of piece, even if the two-way conversation can't happen at that moment. And also that engaging piece as well. If you're passionate about whatever topic it is you're discussing, again, whether it be a program that you're trying to pitch for funding, or an internal decision that you're trying to get buy-in for, being engaging with it and showing that passion through, because that's really the way to really gain buy-in for whatever audience you're speaking to. So some key takeaways, and these are basically the same ones within the presentation, even though I'm definitely going to add the ones that Tyler and Patricia mentioned. So focusing on your key messaging, your tone, your posture in terms of how you're speaking, grabbing the attention of the audience by educating them. Educating, engaging, and empowering. If there's 3 E's that you remember today: educate, engage, and empower. Visuals are key in terms of not just having too much copy, but then really ensuring there's some white space and some visuals like graphics on your presentation. Testing your equipment, as we've mentioned, and your internet, paying that bill, and just looking and feeling the part. This is your dressing, but this is also, again, mentally, because all of this essentially is within the mind, right? If you prep yourself up to and saying, I got this, I'm confident they're going to take what I'm going to say and either go with it or not, but I'm giving all I can, then people are going to feel that too. But as Soren mentioned, be prepared, because life happens. And so these are some examples of what we've seen, whether it be on YouTube or social media, how it's not always panned out because they didn't test prior to. So thank you all. I hope this was relatively engaging. If I did not fulfill what's in the presentation, I am sorry and will turn my camera off. But I definitely welcome any questions or just conversations in general when it comes to today's, topic and presentation.
We've got about 10 minutes for any Q&A. So this is a great opportunity for anyone who has any questions or any feedback or any ideas to share experiences that you've had or things that you've learned. I just added in the chat, I just updated my Zoom a couple days ago and I just noticed that our headshots show up in the chat. So I'm like really curious when I look at the recording if the headshots will show up there as well. Or if I say the chat, will the headshots show up? So I just literally learned a new feature of Zoom right now. Rachel, go ahead.
I have a question. I think there's often a disconnect in virtual presentations versus in-person presentations because of the barrier in not recognizing everyone's nonverbal communication, because a lot of communication is done non-verbally, but in Zoom it's hard to, when you're presenting, to see that and present at the same time. So you talked about reading the room. I was wondering if there's like ways or suggestions that you have, because I feel like sometimes we've had presentations that have gone off the rails,
Right.
with because there's been a disconnect in communication in which we were kind of actually both on the same page, but people didn't recognize it because of how something was presented, because there's a barrier in Zoom because we're not as connected.
So at the end of the day, with their presentations, were the cameras on or were the cameras off in that presentation for those that were disconnected?
The cameras were on.
So I think it's kind of telling sometimes, because the cameras being on or in person can still allow you to have some kind of connection when it comes to those disconnects. But I think oftentimes as presenters, we have to remember that it's still a two-way conversation, and that no matter how much we try to project things and how we try to, convey things within our storytelling, communications are communications, and the same disconnects could also actually happen in person too. It just goes down to the objectives. What are you guys there for? What are you trying to gain? What are their goals? And what are the call to actions in terms of what you're expecting or wanting them to do, and vice versa? And so being solely dependent on the cues or the nonverbal cues, I think may also cause you to be nervous as a speaker, like, oh crap, are they feeling this? Are they not feeling? Are they understanding? I think just kind of remembering to go back to the why and the story and why you're there together will then kind of solve or dissolve any kind of miscommunications that happen within the presentation.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Anyone else? I had put in here in the chat that for anybody who joined us last year, we had a session with Leighton Key from Dale Carnegie. And I was really blown away by him because he did not ask, he put something in the chat. Like he said, I want you all right now to put something in the chat about X. And it was like every 2 minutes, he was telling us to do something. And I like, all right, I want you to, use this reaction or, and I was just like, I was just blown away by it because it kept you from being distracted by anything else because you were always having something that you needed to do. Let's see, we've got a question from Ashley.
Hey, yeah, I love that idea about having someone to ask or answer a question every 2 minutes. So my name is Ashley, and I work for a program where I'm actually presenting to students. So sometimes I am doing virtual because of the pandemic, and I can see the students sitting in the classroom. So what the teachers will do is put the camera on them where I can see them sitting in the class and they're just staring at the screen like, here's this lady talking to me. So I was curious to see if anyone had any suggestions as far as getting kids to engage on a screen. Would I get them to stand up and do some activities, or
what's the
other
age?
than staring? So pre-K to 12th grade.
Oh, the entire, so they're all in the same room at the same time?
Well, no, of course it's based off of their age, but I work with pre-K through 12th grade. and they have all requested virtual at some point.
So I think, oh, can I answer?
Yeah.
So I think in this case, segmentation is really important because the way in which you would engage with, hi, like her glasses, the way in which you would
Thank you.
engage with someone or a child that is K through 3 or even K through 5 would be very different than those who are 9th to 12th grade. And so I think kind of putting that marketing hat on and segmenting the audience is key, at least for the beginning. What will engage, maybe maybe a particular activity for the K through 3 may engage them at least to get their attention for 5 minutes. But then you also understand that they are still, at this particular age and that there are different activities that will be suitable for them. And so I think 1, segmenting them, 2, determining the different activities that will engage them, whether it may be more thought-provoking for the older kids or more, what color is this? What color is this would be advantageous. Yeah. But then also finding ways to kind of ask questions or really engaging things. So I, sidebar, do volunteering for my children's ministry at my church. And one of the activities we do with the kids is we have like a code word that we have for every different Sunday. And so today we're going to say blue. When it's time for us to say blue, that means you got to do, and it's whatever activity, jump up and down, smile, clap, just some way to kind of keep them engaged. And so that's just one example of something. So you could, finish your lesson and say blue, and then see who's all, just to kind of get their attention. And or if it's older kids, again, having more thought-provoking kind of conversations or activities to getting them, something that's more relatable. It has, of course, depending upon how deep and, personal it is. But again, activities and segmentation will definitely be key to engaging them and keeping them engaged.
Thank you.
Sure, no problem.
Any other questions?
Since I still can't figure out the whole raise the hand thing, no, I mean, honestly, I've been looking, it actually brings up a good question for that, because how do you handle people, or not handle people, like, how do you deal with it when people don't know technology very well? Because I mean, I'm literally like, I know how to use some parts of Zoom, but like, it wasn't even until probably sometime last, like in a random breakout session or with another, or during another meeting, that I even learned about changing the backgrounds and different things. And so, because I mean, so when I have my peer support group meetings, a lot of times it's just, I have various ages of people where it's like, they're not necessarily hugely wanting to be on Zoom, anybody, depending on, because I'm tech savvy to a point, as you can see, because I can figure out how to do the raise the hand thing, which I'll feel very smart once I figure that out.
So ironically, and I think this is where the presenter can kind of help with that. While waiting to see if anyone wanted to say anything, I actually was going through all the presenters and I saw you doing this. And so right when you took yourself off of mute, I was actually going to call your name and say, Patricia, did you need? So I think that alone, just taking that initiative to think, okay, is anyone struggling? Is anyone, doing this or kind of fidgeting or opening their mouth? And I think those verbal cues, or not verbal, non-verbal cues rather, can be essential, especially when the cameras are on. Unfortunately, if a camera's off, it's hard to really know if they have a question or not have a question, or if they're having difficulties. So maybe depending upon the target audience, if you think that they may not be as tech savvy, putting something in the chat prior to, like, raise hand, react, like I think Catherine, just put it in there. Reactions, raise hand. Maybe those little cues to knowing where to go to do what may also help with that audience. Like, I see it now.
Well, no, and that's the thing. I told you I would feel smart when I would see it, because I was looking at all the little things across right at where it says right above raise hand. I just was not looking at the raise hand thing. So there you go. I mean,
no, but great question.
And I got one question from Andrea.
Hi, everyone. Don't judge me on my question, because I know I could just Google this, but since we're on the phone talking about Zoom and everything, I figured I'd go ahead and ask. But my question, I kind of thought about it when Patricia was talking. When people aren't tech savvy, I've had meetings before where there's like so much going on in the background. That person, I might identify them and say, hey, would you mind muting your phone? They can't quite figure it out, and it's very distracting. So is there a mute all button in Zoom where you can mute all the participants as the host?
Yes, and you also can even mute someone while they're speaking. Well, not while they're speaking, sorry. While the background noise is taking place in the back.
Oh, I see you just did. Okay. All right.
I just muted her just to show you that it was possible.
Like, wait a minute.
Okay, well, thank you so much. That'll be very helpful. I'll have to go and look for where that is.
No problem.
If you take your cursor and you hover over the person, it'll say it'll give you a mute button.
Okay, thank you.
Normally I wouldn't be that rude. Just sort of show you how that was possible.
That's one thing you can't do in person.
Right. Okay.
That is 100% true.
Right. Wish I had that button.
On a tirade. Any other questions? Anything anybody got? Any last minute thoughts? Oh, Candace talking about her 4 little friends that interrupt our Zooms. Oh. If anybody has a pet in the background, I'm like, oh, let me see your dog.
A schnauzer?
Any last minute questions? Awesome. Well, I'm going to give a huge round of applause to Elizabeth. Thank you so much for taking some time. She's out in Atlanta, so it's a lot later there for her than it is for us here. And I hope you guys all, learned a couple of tips and tricks. She's a fantastic resource. She's got her LinkedIn. She's on all the social platforms. So I've tagged her in everything. You guys can definitely connect, and I'll have not only the recording tomorrow, but her PowerPoint slides. And then I'll add that book recommendation into my email tomorrow. So you guys will get a wrap up of all of those resources. Before we go, I wanted to share one big event that's going on for all of you guys. I put it in the Facebook group for all of you who have been dying and cannot wait to network in person. This is the biggest young professional event in Nashville. It's hosted by the Nashville Area Chamber of Commerce. It's going to be at Rocketown on February 15th. There's over 50 different YP organizations in Nashville. It literally looks like this. There's live music, there's drinks. CNM, our YNP group, will have a booth there. But for all of you who have been just chomping at the bit and cannot wait, it's free to attend. I'll have all of the information there. And there's going to be a different event coming up in March. It's not up on their website yet, but I believe that one's hosted by the Nashville Junior Chamber. So that's coming up. So I hope to see all of you guys there. It's a great event. It's how I first got involved with CNM, so it kind of holds a special place in my heart. But I definitely hope you guys come. It's totally worth it. It's one of the best events, and they only do it once a year, so it's like you make the time. It's totally worth it. Thank you so much, Elizabeth. If you got the time to stick around, we usually do about like 10 minutes of some kind of like group networking, because they don't get the opportunity to do all of that. I'm gonna